Shedeur Sanders was supposed to be a top 10 pick, maybe even number 1 overall. He had the stats, he had the pedigree, he had the spotlight. So how did one of the most electric quarterback prospects in modern college football fall to pick 144? And now, just months into his rookie year, we've got confrontation footage, talks of a walkout, conspiracy rumors, and powerful voices across sports media saying the unthinkable. Was Shedeur Sanders blackballed by the NFL? This week, a clip surfaced, allegedly showing Shedeur confronting This isn't just a benching. This isn't even just a controversy. This is a scandal. One that's pulling in stars, insiders, and owners across the NFL. From a fake draft night prank to shocking contract clauses no rookie has ever pulled off, to insider claims of collusion and blackballing at the league level. Whatever's happening with Shedeur Sanders is bigger than Cleveland, and it runs deeper than one quarterback battle. Because if what the reports are suggesting is true, the NFL didn't just try to humble Shedeur Sanders. They may have tried to destroy him. And it might just be the biggest story of the year. Heading into the 2025 NFL Draft, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just in the conversation. He was the conversation. He had just wrapped a season at Colorado where he posted over 4,100 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, and a nation-leading 74% completion rate. He turned a struggling team into a national headline factory and did it all under the brightest lights. With NFL DNA from his father Dion, a calm pocket presence, and media charisma off the charts, Sanders was being painted as a can't-miss talent. ESPN's Mel Kiper had him as high as number 6. DraftKings listed him at plus 100 to go first overall. Analysts called him the future face of a franchise. But then the draft started, and things got weird. The Titans passed, then the Panthers passed, then the Raiders, Bears, Jets, and Broncos, all teams with questionable QB depth, passed. One pick turned into 10, 10 into 50. By the end of day 2, Shedeur Sanders was still waiting, still undrafted, still stunned. And then came the gut punch, a fake phone call. He announced it to the crowd, got excited, and seconds later realized it was a cruel joke. The clip went viral. He went silent. The fall ended at pick number 144, when Cleveland traded up to grab him in the 5th round, a move fans immediately labeled disrespectful. What just happened? Media outlets scrambled. Rumors flew. Had teams turned on him behind the scenes? Was it Dion's influence? Were they sending a message? Shedeur's fall wasn't just confusing, it was humiliating. And for many, that was the moment they realized this wasn't just about football anymore. It should have been a night to remember, for all the right reasons. But for Shedeur Sanders, the 2025 NFL Draft turned from dream into a raw, gutsy move intended to share the biggest moment of his life with fans in real time. Instead, what unfolded was utterly cruel. As cameras rolled, Shedeur picked up a call. On the other end, a voice claiming to be Saints GM Mickey Loomis. The message? New Orleans was trading up for him. Shedeur smiled. You could see the pressure lift off his shoulders. "Let's be legendary," he said with a grin, thinking his football journey had just begun. But seconds later, that smile faded. The call? A hoax, reportedly orchestrated by Ole Miss students who had somehow obtained his number. There was no trade, no selection, just silence, embarrassment, and a Twitch stream full of fans watching their favorite player get humiliated live. The video went viral instantly. The phrase, "That's not funny, man," spoken by Sanders on the call, hit TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, and ESPN within hours. It wasn't just a prank, it was a public gut punch, perfectly encapsulating how a player once hyped as a top pick had suddenly become a punchline. But to many watching, that moment wasn't about jokes. It was symbolic. Something felt off about how fast the NFL turned on Shedeur Sanders. how fast he went from polished prospect to media scapegoat. The prank wasn't the start of the fall. It was the confirmation that this draft story wasn't just unusual. It was personal. And maybe it was intentional. When a quarterback with Heisman-level stats, NFL bloodlines, and national market appeal falls all the way to the 5th round, one question bubbles up. What aren't we being told? Because Shedeur Sanders didn't just slip, he plummeted. And almost Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson added fuel to the fire when he claimed on the Pivot podcast that the NFL had quietly instructed teams to avoid Sanders altogether. His words were blunt. The NFL told teams, don't take this kid. But why? Some insiders pointed to Deion Sanders' involvement. Shedeur's father had openly voiced which teams he didn't want his son playing for. Something NFL executives don't take kindly to. Owners don't like being told no, especially by players, families. Others say it was about power. Reports surfaced that Shedeur and his camp pushed for groundbreaking contract terms, revenue shares on merchandise, NIL-style embedded clauses, and media rights that made him more partner than employee. The story goes, NFL owners weren't just wary of Shedeur's arm. Antonio Brown, never one to hold back, took the conspiracy even further, claiming 31 NFL owners had a quiet pact to steer clear of Shedeur, and only Cleveland's Jimmy Haslam broke rank. Whether you believe AB or not, it added gasoline to a fire that was already burning. And then there's ESPN's Stephen A. Smith, who didn't mince words either. He suggested there were uncomfortable racial undertones involved, comparing Sanders' treatment to Colin Kaepernick, a player the league wanted to send a message to, not because of his talent, but because of what he represented. When you stack all that against his college numbers, the draft day prank, and the viral downfall, the narrative shifts. This wasn't just coincidence. This smelled like control. And if players are being blackballed simply for pushing boundaries, that's bigger than one lost draft pick. That's about power. When Shedeur Sanders finally landed with the Cleveland Browns, reports quickly surfaced that his rookie deal wasn't your typical Day 3 contract. It was something never seen before in the NFL. According to multiple outlets, Sanders' camp negotiated equity-like clauses in his agreement, tying his income not only to his play, but to merchandise, sponsorships, and media tied directly to his name. That effectively made him less of an employee and more of a business partner. Think about that for a second. NFL owners are used to dictating everything: jersey sales, sponsorship splits, even behind-the-scenes content. But Sanders flipped the model. His brother, Deion Jr., reportedly secured the right to produce exclusive media on Shedeur's journey. Any jersey or sponsorship tied to Why? Because if Sanders set that precedent, other rookies would ask for it too. And suddenly, the NFL's carefully guarded financial structure would be cracked wide open. One source quoted by CBS called it a dangerous model for owners. Dangerous for them, yes. For players, it was revolutionary. And Sanders didn't just pull it off quietly. Reports say his jersey sales alone surpassed almost every rookie from his draft class, worth over $250 million globally within months. His personal commission? Around $14 million before his first real snap. To Sanders supporters, this proved his value went beyond the field. To the league, it proved their worst fear. Players could control not just the game, but the business of the game. That's why many believe that was the ultimate red flag. If Shedeur Sanders' contract was unusual, his immediate impact off the field was downright historic. Before he ever threw an NFL pass, Sanders was already reshaping the Browns' brand, and the league knew it. Within weeks of being drafted, reports say Shedeur's jersey was the top-selling rookie jersey in the NFL, surpassing players drafted in the first round and even outpacing some established stars. By mid-season, merchandise tied to Sanders had reportedly climbed past $250 million in sales, with Shedeur pocketing millions thanks to those groundbreaking clauses. For Cleveland, it was lightning in a bottle. The buzz around Sanders helped sell out season tickets, spike engagement across social media, and even boost local businesses downtown on Sundays. Restaurants near the stadium said fans came just to see Shedeur. But here's where the league grew uncomfortable. The NFL thrives on controlling narratives, drip-feeding hype around stars they choose to elevate. Sanders bypassed all of that. With his family brand, his NIL roots, and his independent media team documenting every moment, Shedeur wasn't just an NFL quarterback. He was an entertainment platform all by himself. For league power brokers, this was a nightmare scenario. If Sanders succeeded, other players would demand similar branding freedom. Instead of the NFL tightly owning the spotlight, athletes would start carving out their own piece of the pie. So, while Sanders' presence was a godsend for fan engagement, it also positioned him as a challenge to the league's control. That's why critics believe it came next. The harsh treatment, the inexplicable draft slide, the quick benchings. It was about the league drawing a line in the sand. Shedeur's star was rising too fast and too independently for their comfort. As if the draft day humiliation wasn't enough, Cleveland somehow found a way to make things worse. Not only did the Browns select Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, they had already drafted Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. 2 rookie quarterbacks in the same draft class, one hyped as a generational talent, the other quietly projected as a developmental guy. Instead of bringing clarity, it created instant chaos. Training camp looked like a circus. Sanders carried all the buzz, but the reps didn't reflect it. Insiders reported Gabriel often got more first-team snaps, while Shedeur was shuffled behind veterans and relegated to scout team duties. Fans noticed, media noticed, and Shedeur noticed. By preseason, the dysfunction was plain to see. In his debut, Sanders flashed potential, but in subsequent games, he looked unsettled, pressured constantly, and visibly uncomfortable behind a weak preseason offensive line. Critics pounced. The Browns fed that criticism by immediately sliding him back down the depth chart. Meanwhile, Gabriel was praised for being steady in the system, even though his ceiling was nowhere close to Shedeur's hype. Then came the owner bombshell. During a July presser, Jimmy Haslam publicly distanced himself from drafting Sanders, saying it was the GM's call. To media and fans, it looked like Cleveland's top boss was already preparing excuses if things went wrong. From there, the Browns fractured. Coaches leaned toward Gabriel for system discipline. Ownership wanted Sanders for star power and revenue. The locker room split between flashy support for Shedeur and steady loyalty to Gabriel. What should have been a chance to develop a potential franchise QB turned into an organizational tug-of-war. Instead of solving their quarterback nightmare, Cleveland doubled it. And in the process, they may have lit the fuse for the league's loudest controversy. For head coach Kevin Stefanski, football has always been about system over stardom. You trust the scheme. You trust discipline. You trust structure. It's a philosophy that helped him carve out a reputation as a steady, detail-oriented coach. But when Shedeur Sanders walked into Cleveland, Stefanski's system collided with something much bigger. A spotlight too bright to dim. To Stefanski supporters, Gabriel was the ideal system, everything a control-driven coach values. Sanders, on the other hand, was the opposite. He thrived off improvisation, extended plays with his legs, and produced highlight reel throws that didn't always match the chalkboard. Flashy? Absolutely. But to Stefanski, also risky. The tension grew with every week. Sanders didn't need the coaches to push his name. Fans and the media were already doing it. Every practice clip hit TikTok. Every sideline smile went viral. Even without a starting role, Shedeur was the story. For a coach desperate to keep control, that became a nightmare. Reports suggest Stefanski saw Sanders' rising star as a distraction, a player the front office and ownership were using as a marketing machine instead of developing quietly. For Sanders' supporters, it was proof the coach never believed in him to begin with. This is where the Browns' identity crisis sharpened. Was this a team built on strict structure? Or one ready to embrace a generational talent, even if it meant chaos? In most organizations, stardom and system can coexist. In Cleveland, they collided head-on. Stefanski doubled down on control, while Sanders' spotlight only grew brighter. And in that collision, the Browns lost the one thing a franchise needs most: unity. To understand why Shedeur Sanders may have faced such resistance, you have to zoom out. This isn't the first time the NFL reacted forcefully against a player who challenged its structure of control. Analysts like Stephen A. Smith have already drawn parallels to the case of Colin Kaepernick. Different circumstances, different eras, but the common thread is unmistakable. A league uncomfortable with players who disrupt the hierarchy of power. Kaepernick wasn't just a quarterback. He became a global figure, a powerful voice that scared NFL ownership. And rather than embrace a new reality, the league quietly shut the door on him. Now look at Shedeur. He's more than a rookie quarterback. He's a brand. A player who negotiated contract clauses no one had seen before. An athlete whose jersey sales broke records before his first start. A quarterback tied directly to Deion Sanders, a household name who brings his own gravitational pull. To owners who spent decades guarding influence, that looks less like a prospect and more like a threat. Because if Shedeur succeeds, who comes next? What if other rookies demand revenue shares, media rights, or public influence over where they play? The NFL thrives on players fitting into lanes. Shedeur Sanders built his own highway. And just like with Kaepernick, some insiders believe the league's coordinated cold shoulder wasn't about talent, but about message control. Sanders represented independence, freedom, and visibility they couldn't rein in. In other words, the NFL wasn't just wary of his arm, they were wary of his influence. And history shows the league doesn't forget and it doesn't forgive. If the whispers of blackballing weren't explosive enough, things escalated when an unlikely figure entered the picture. A fan filing a $100 million lawsuit against the NFL. The claim? Emotional distress and damages tied directly to Shedeur Sanders' draft slide into the 5th round. On the surface, it sounded wild. A frustrated supporter trying to turn heartbreak into a payday. But once lawyers and analysts looked closer, the case raised questions the league absolutely doesn't want asked. Why? One word: discovery. Discovery means lawyers could demand access to private emails, text messages, meeting notes, anything that could reveal whether there was direct communication between owners or league officials suppressing Sanders' draft stock. Even if the initial lawsuit is shaky, the process of legal digging is what terrifies billion-dollar corporations. Because if even a single email shows behind-the-scenes coordination, it would validate the collusion theories and blow the NFL's credibility wide open. Legal experts quickly noted that while proving collusion is extremely difficult, the very threat of document subpoenas might be enough to push the NFL into settlement or aggressive damage control. It's the one scenario where a simple fan lawsuit could snowball into a full-fledged scandal. And the optics? Brutal. Headlines about a league being sued over sabotaging Shedeur Sanders only amplify the perception that this was never just football. The NFL's golden rule has always been, protect the shield at all costs. But this lawsuit, no matter how shaky, threatens to pierce it. And the closer it gets to discovery, the louder the calls for the truth will become. For all the chaos, one thing is clear: Shedeur Sanders is far from powerless here. In fact, he may hold more leverage right now than any rookie quarterback in recent memory. Despite the draft slide, the controversy, and the internal dysfunction in Cleveland, behind the scenes, sources claim multiple franchises are monitoring the situation closely. QB-needy organizations in big markets like Atlanta, Washington, and Las Vegas would reportedly jump at the chance to trade for him if Cleveland completely loses control. And let's not forget, the NFL thrives on stars. Teams desperate for momentum see him as more than a quarterback. They see him as a one-man business model. For Sanders personally, this moment could define his legacy. Stay in Cleveland and fight through dysfunction? Or look elsewhere and unleash his full potential without the The real story is this: can the NFL contain the kind of influence he represents? And right now, the answer feels less certain every day. The Shedeur Sanders saga started as a shocking draft slide. It's now morphed into one of the biggest storylines in modern football, and maybe even a turning point for the NFL itself. Think about it. This wasn't just a quarterback falling further than expected. This was a Heisman-caliber prospect with massive marketability, groundbreaking contract clauses, and a last name synonymous with football royalty. And somehow, he not only plummeted to the 5th round, but landed on a franchise already drowning in dysfunction. Then came the humiliating prank call, the public owner disavowal, and now, locker room footage sparking whispers of betrayal. Layer that with allegations of collusion, ... Reports of owners resisting player empowerment and lawsuits threatening to dig into league secrets, and suddenly, what should have been a rookie storyline has become a referendum on how the NFL does business. For Cleveland, the damage might already be done. Instead of celebrating the steal of the draft, they've become the epicenter of controversy. Their quarterback room divided, their reputation in freefall. For Shedeur Sanders, the irony is sharper. The more the league seems to resist him, the bigger his name gets. This isn't just about one young QB trying to prove himself. It's about what he represents. A new era of athlete who comes in with leverage, independence, and a spotlight that can't be dimmed. Whether he thrives in Cleveland or finds a new home, one truth feels inevitable: Shedeur Sanders has already changed the game. He may have entered the league as just another prospect, but now he's a symbol of where the NFL and its battles over power, image, and control is heading next.